Madam President.
The senator from Idaho is recognized.
Madam President, I've been here on the floor of the Senate for the last half hour listening to my colleagues in what is in fact a very important debate for this country. And I say that even though the wringing of hands would suggest that somehow the debate is being blocked and the will of the Senate has been thwarted. I suggest quite the opposite. It really has become a finger-pointing in a procedural way. I believe the Republican leader came to the floor yesterday and said, let's have a couple of votes, simple votes. You can vote up or down on the Levin Warner resolution. You can vote up or down on the Gregg resolution. It was then the leadership on the majority side, the Democrat side, that blocked it. And so I don't think the American people are unwise to the tactics at hand, nor are they unwise or not frustrated by what's going on in Iraq today. Clearly, we are focused, whether it is the Congress of the United States or a vast majority of the American people, becoming increasingly critical of a war that has frustrated many of us. The senator from Maryland voted against it. He said so just a few moments ago. I voted for it. At the same time, I grow increasingly critical, as do many of the citizens of my state, as to what will be the future, what will be our success and or failure, and how many more American lives must stand in the way. I'm critically concerned that this government in Iraq now stand up. We've allowed them to form and to shape and to vote. They now have a constitution. They now must lead. And in leading, I would hope it could bring stability to their region, that it will not offset and throw out of balance what the free world looks at and says is very important. And that is, of course, the war on terror and the general stability of the Middle East. Indeed, I think much has been lost in the debate around this country as to the significance of the Middle East itself. And I was extremely pleased last week when that kind, older statesman of our country, Henry Kissinger, came before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and in a very real and important way, and in a bipartisan way, said, let us not forget our perspective. While for the short term and for the moment, we are focused on Iraq as we should be, let us not fail to recognize that since World War II, we've been in the Middle East to bring stability to the region for a safer, more stable Western world. I don't think there's any question about that. He was frank about it when he stressed diplomacy as an important tool. I've long advocated frank, open talks amongst our friends and neighbors around the world, not only about the region, but about the role of Iraq within the region and what we must do. However, Dr. Kissinger also stressed that under the present condition in Iraq, withdrawal or the signs of withdrawal is simply not an option for America's forces. So anyone who comes to the floor today and says, oh, but it is an option, and we ought to start now, or we ought to send all the signals to our friends and neighbors around the world that we're beginning to pull back, is going against a trend that I think is critically important and could set in motion the kind of activity in Iraq that could bring about a phenomenal genocide and the possibility of neighbors tumbling in on top of neighbors to create conflict in the Middle East that could bring the whole of the region down. And if that were to happen, then I'm quite confident those who now want to withdraw would find themselves in a very precarious situation. What do? Do we go back in with greater force to stabilize the region when friendly, moderate Arab nations are now tumbling into war because we would no longer stand or we would no longer force through a diplomatic process those countries of the world to come together to work with us, to cooperate? While most agree that the current situation in Iraq must be dealt with politically, and we've heard that time and again, and economically, our military involvement is critical to provide the Iraqis the stability they need in this new democratic process. Now, I don't mind pegging timelines a little bit, and I don't mind thresholds and measurements, and I think it's important that we not only send that message, that we get it done. We get it done for the sake of our position in Iraq and certainly forcing the Iraqi government to move. Those are all phenomenally important issues. Let me ask unanimous consent that the whole of my statement become a part of the record, and let me stress on